that summer, Philip had left and I came on and we got the sightlines report. I know you guys have seen the sightlines report. They actually presented to us. At that time, we were informed that over 10 years, we could expect about $28 million worth of facilities improvements that needed to be done between Valley View, Gildersleeve, Brownstone, and the secondary conference. Real quick, just to remind you, these aren't any upgrades. You know, these aren't adding new classrooms or building new gyms or auditoriums. These are strictly maintenance. These were things like we need new roofs, we need parking lots redone, we need boilers, we need windows. So this $28 million was categorized into different levels of imperative: 1 to 3 year, 3 to 5 year, 5 to 7 year, and 7 to 10 years. But generally speaking, we could expect that over the next 10 years, we were looking at about $28 million worth of work. So next slide, please. The Board of Education and I got together at that time, and we sort of said, hey, that's a lot of money. You know, it's not an awful big surprise to us. We knew it was going to be a lot of money. You know, anybody who works in the schools or spends time in them knows that the schools are getting old and showing some wear and tear. But certainly the Board of Education and our facilities, buildings, and ground committee on the board said, hey, let's take some time and take a dive into this and figure out if there might be better ways that we could spend that $28 million as opposed to simply investing it into the current facilities that we have. So that year that we reopened, I worked with a committee from the Board of Education, and we started brainstorming and looking at options and kicking around some ideas about what we might do instead of, or if we were to do something different than simply upgrade our existing facilities. We shared some of those thoughts with the Board of Selectmen last spring 2021. I think the reaction from the Board of Selectmen at that time was, we appreciate your work, we like it, and to show our support, we're going to form a committee for you. Board of Selectmen passed a resolution and formed up a committee. If we can get the next slide, please. Here's the committee. So this group, I can't thank them enough. Let me just start by saying that they've worked really hard and have put a lot of hours into this over the past year. Real quickly, Lou has chaired the committee. He's done remarkable work. Eileen Moynihan, resident of town. She's a parent. She's a teacher at Brownstone. Scott Nichols, superintendent of Ellington Public Schools. His wisdom and experience has been invaluable to this group. Kerry Darby and Peter Flanda, parents in town. Also great experience. Peter in particular works in the trades and has a pretty good idea of how these things have worked in other districts. Bob and Mike, I can't thank you enough for your time and input into this group. And of course, Meg and Dave have been working with us. So shout out to these folks. They've done great work all year. And we, I think, have some really exciting things to show. So next slide, please. Let's go to the next slide. I'll skip over that part for the sake of time. That basically just gives you a sense of a lot of the work that we've done and involved in looking at existing facilities and reports. And you know, we've left no stone unturned, I think. We've done our homework and put together a pretty comprehensive process. So I'm going to hand this out to you. This is the first piece of feedback that we're going to ask for. So I'm giving you this on a piece of paper. You can take notes if you feel like that's something you like to do. One of the things Lou helped our committee do was develop some priorities. We brainstormed, we thought a lot about what we would like to see in any plans that we bring forward or any recommendations we bring forward. So these are the guiding thoughts, the ideas, the things that are most important to the facilities committee. And certainly we'd like to hear from the Board of Selectmen if you think we got it right. Do you share these priorities? And as you consider any reports that we put together or recommendations that this facilities committee compiles, if we checked all of these boxes here, would we have it right? And these are in order of importance to the committee. So first, most important, we want to make sure that any plans we bring forward ensures that there's high quality academic space for all of our students and teachers in all of our programs, all of our grade levels, from the music, arts, academics, that all of our schools provide high quality academic space for our students. That's, I think, the most important principle that this committee has been working with. Second, we want to make sure that all of our academic space promotes a positive school climate and culture. We want our spaces to be warm, to be inviting, to be the kind of place where students enjoy being and want to learn, and the kind of place where our teachers enjoy being and want to teach, right? So high quality academic space and academic space that promotes a positive school culture and climate, I think, are the two most important things to our committee. We've talked a lot about what that looks like and what that means. Third, we know particularly Valley View, Gildersleeve, and Brownstone were designed by architects in times prior to Columbine, when concerns about school security were different than they are now. We know that our schools can have some work with respect, need some work with respect to improving the security of them and improving that footprint. So any plans that we bring forward are going to place a premium on school security and the design of infrastructure that keeps our students, faculty, and staff as safe as possible. Third, we know particularly Gildersleeve, Valley View, and Brownstone don't have air conditioning, and that the heating systems in those buildings are getting old, so it can either be very, very hot in the buildings or at times cold. We also know, and we've learned a lot from the pandemic, about the importance of indoor air quality, air that's circulated, subject to HEPA filtering, and cleans to promote indoor air quality. So certainly our committee wants to make sure that any recommendations we bring forward prioritize HVAC systems and the kind of space that is comfortable year-round for our students. Energy efficiency has something we've kicked around on our committee. It's very important to us. We know in particular Gildersleeve is not energy efficient just about at all. Certainly, I'm concerned this year about the price of heating fuel and how we're going to keep these buildings warm, but any proposals that we bring to you are going to prioritize energy efficiency, not only in terms of our commitment to reducing our carbon footprint, but also the cost savings that a more energy efficient building would bring to the district is something that is important for us to consider. Learning space that optimizes a cost-effective structure for the future. Okay? So I'm here to tell you, and I'm going to show you tonight, running 3 buildings, particularly at the elementary school level, is very expensive. We're paying a lot of staffing overhead, and I'm going to give you a staffing analysis tonight. In addition to the upkeep and operations of those buildings, it's quite expensive. It's costly. So anything we bring forward, we'd like to make sure that we bring forward ideas that are cost effective for the future. So we want to make sure our budgets are sustainable for the future and that we're spending taxpayer dollars wisely, not only this year, but if this is a 5 to 10 year plan, certainly over the next 10 years. So cost efficiency has been something that is also a priority for our committee. With respect to student enrollment increases, we know that our student enrollment is pretty flat for the next 10 years. We've commissioned some studies and had a demographer take a look. We can expect about a 5% increase in our student enrollment over the next 10 years. That's relatively stable. The only X factor out there is the potential for full-day pre-K. So there's talk every year about adding pre-kindergarten as a full-day program available to anybody. Now it's a partial day program. Similar to the way we added kindergarten as a full-day program probably 5 or 6 years ago. I suspect that in the next 5 to 10 years, as soon as funding sources become available from the state or federal governments, we're going to be looking at full-day pre-kindergarten. So we would be wise, if we look ahead 10 years, to consider or make sure that we're building capacity for the potential of full-day pre-kindergarten. Last two, of course, we want to make sure that we comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act and that students, regardless of ability, have access to all areas of the building. That's a legal and ethical obligation, certainly something that is very important in the context of equity. And of course, we want to have high-quality community space so that when the schools aren't in session, whether it's travel basketball or Little League or Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, any number of park and rec camps, we want to make sure that we have high-quality space for the community to use when we're not using it. So I'm going to stop and ask, and Lou's going to take notes, if the Board of Selectmen both shares these priorities and in terms of importance, did we have it right? Is there anything on here you would look at and say, we've either missed something or you would encourage us to deprioritize any of these things?
I think the list is very comprehensive, and I assume that all the technology portion with the building, the water, the operating technology aspect is tied into this as well, assuming that's part of this.
We are a tech-dependent world, and without that consideration, we would step back.
Yeah, I was just thinking that as well, and obviously, as long as it's considered implied in any one, the first bullet, then I think it's covered. I mean, it's kind of interesting that, I sit there and I look at the HVAC bullet and I go, geez, I don't know, maybe that one should be, in the scheme of things, it's fine where it is, but it's like, maybe that should have been higher at the rate we, what we just dealt with for 2 years. But I think the list to me seems comprehensive. I don't think anything sticks in my mind that is really missing from it.
I applaud the committee. I think the list is comprehensive. I think the order is pretty spot on.
Thank you. I would say that feedback is very consistent with the feedback we've got from all of our focus groups. I think there's universal feelings that if we can accomplish all of these things, that we would have done a good job. So, what I'm going to ask you is keep this in front of you, and what I want you to ask yourself as I go forward, which of the options that I'm about to present to you next do you think would maximize the opportunity for us to achieve this? So if this is what we all agree is most important for our town, for our students, for our families, for our taxpayers, which of the options do you believe could help us achieve each of these things with fidelity? Make sense? Okay, next slide. So, after lots of discussion and major brainstorming sessions and the input from an architecture firm named Fryer, who has been incredibly helpful, here are the options that I want to present with you to tonight. I'm going to spend a little bit of time unpacking each of these, and then the point of the focus group is to get your feedback about which of these do you think would put us in a position that we would be most likely to achieve this vision for the next 5 to 10 years. So first option, maintain 5 schools. Continue to do what we're doing now and figure out a process to generate the $28 million that the sightlines told us we need to do the maintenance and upkeep of all 5 of our current schools. One thing about option 1 I just want to point out, I shared it with Ryan today, and he shared it with you. Fryer came in, and as part of our contract with them, they did another facility study of each school. And I shared with you, it's about a 162-page overview that Fryer did on all of the schools. Fryer confirmed the accuracy of the sightlines report and identified some additional things that they believe we should consider over the next 10 years if we're going to maintain all 5 schools. Additionally, they updated the costs. The sightlines report is 2 years old. We know what inflation is looking like now. To maintain 5 schools, the cost over the next 10 years is right now closer to $35 million. So it was at 28 2 years ago. After Fryer's analysis, if option 1 makes the most sense, we're looking at about $35 million over 10 years.
I just one question, that 28 million, when they did that study, was it broken down per school?
Yes.
And how much of that 28 million was for the high school, middle school?
I'm going to show you. 11 million. That's coming.
And how old's that?
Yeah, can I answer that question shortly? I'm
Yeah.
going to let you see that. It was broken down, high school, secondary, and each of the schools.
So with regards to that option, and obviously I know one of the things we'll be discussing is where there potentially could be some matching funding from the state. Is there, in that first option, is there any matching funding? I can't remember in the discussion.
Fryer has been very helpful in letting us know what the cost to town would be and what the cost to state would be. There are big differences. The lowest amount of state reimbursement we receive for any of these projects is option 1, and I'm going to show you those numbers in a moment. And then, of course, and I'll help you make sense of what we would receive reimbursement for from the state for things like code compliance, ADA compliance, some roofs. But generally speaking, option 1, according to Fryer, and from what I know, the state looks at that primarily as maintenance, which they see as a local responsibility. All right, keep option one in mind, and the question we're gonna ask you is, do you think we could achieve this vision if we stuck with option one? Option two, this would involve reducing from 5 schools to 4. So essentially, closing a school. After lots of discussion on the committee about which school, whether that's closing Valley View, whether that's closing Gildersleeve, or whether that's closing Brownstone, and input from Fryer, the school that makes the most sense if option 2 is one that we believe would help us achieve this vision would be to close Gildersleeve. The reason for that is, look, Gildersleeve's location, the property is very narrow and there's not a lot of room to add on, and there's some wetlands back there that would make it difficult to add onto Gildersleeve. In addition, closing Valley View doesn't make sense because it's on the same campus as the high school, middle school, and of course, Brownstone's, not something that would make sense to close and then upgrade Brownstone and Valley. So the committee settled on that if we were to go with option 2, reduce from 5 schools to 4, it would make the most sense to close Gildersleeve and then make Valley View pre-K to 2, make Brownstone 3 to 5, and potentially move the 6th grade to the middle school, or make Valley View pre-K to 3, make Brownstone 4 to 6, keep the middle school 7, 8, and make the high school 9 through 12. Option C that you see down here, I should take it off. Brownstone is designed as a high school. It's functioning as an upper elementary school right now. It wouldn't be appropriate for pre-K or K, certainly because of its location on a busy road and the 2 floors. So it's really option 2A and 2B that made the most sense to the committee. The first piece of feedback I would ask for your thoughts about is the thoughts about 6th grade.
I was gonna ask that question because I distinctly remember when they were building the middle school, and I wanted to know what public feedback you've received. There was a very strong feeling at the time that 7th grade wasn't necessarily the right place to be that close to the high school students. And I think now in retrospect, people get it, and I think it's actually worked out better because I think in many cases, the high school kids have almost acted as mentors for these kids. But I'm curious if the feedback from the public is ready now to move 6th grade up on the hill.
Interesting. So 2 things before I answer that. Well, one thing, really. First, if we were to move the 6th grade to the middle school, there is enough space there right now that we wouldn't have to do a thing. We could move the 6th grade to the middle school this year, and as long as the staff went with it, the facilities are large enough to accommodate that, which is important to know. As far as feedback, and Lou and I have had asked this question several, there is not universal consensus around whether 6th grade is better at a middle school or if it is better in the elementary school model. And there's not a lot of research on it. Every town does it a little different. My kids go to a grade 6 through 8 middle school in Wallingford. Many school districts run 6 through 8 middle schools. Many districts also run pre-K to 6 elementary schools. The question is, what is Portland? We could do either one of these things and plan for that for the future. Generally speaking, 6th grade is weird. Nobody kind of loves 6th grade.
I went to Portland Junior High when it was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and 6th grade was there, but it really was in its own wing, and it did its own thing within that wing. So, it's always been an issue, I'm sure.
Yeah. And the concern comes down to, I say this tongue in cheek, are we concerned that the 6th graders are going to eat the kindergartners, or that the 6th graders are going to be eaten by the seniors? Right? It's that weird age group.
Yeah.
The feedback from the focus groups are, people kind of take a position, but then as they think it through, the consensus generally comes down to, as long as you keep the 6th graders segregated, either from the seniors if they're at the middle school to keep them innocent for another year, or keep them segregated by designing a building that keeps them separated from the pre-K students, folks could be interested. The way I would summarize it was particularly with the Valley View faculty that who nowadays knows pre-K, K1. They were very concerned about the option we're gonna get to in a minute, which is a pre-K 6 school. Because they didn't want the 6th grade near the pre-KK students. They felt that that age difference was concerning. And the Valley View teachers started by saying, send them to the middle school. But then they got to, as we talked about it a little more, okay, keep them potentially in an elementary school model, but design it to keep them segregated. And then they got to, boy, we like the idea of 6th graders potentially being book buddies or classroom helpers, as long as any interactions between like younger students and the older students were structured and supervised. So we don't have universal consensus on what to do with 6th grade, except that whatever we do with 6th grade, we should plan for them in a way that keeps them separated from, so that either we maintain their innocence, or that we keep them from having a deleterious effect on younger students. And I think we could accomplish.
And just one last thought, and then I'll shut my mouth. With the 6th graders, I think that is the first age group that really begins with sports and things of that nature. So if you blended the 6th grade into the lower level, would they, in your discussions, is there a plan for them to have access to the athletic fields and whatever else they may need?
That's also come up in these discussions. And right now, we don't allow 6th graders to go from Brownstone up to the middle school for athletics. To be honest, I don't know why we couldn't. I mean, it's something, there's no CIAC regulations or otherwise, no reason why 6th graders couldn't be on the cross-country team or the soccer teams. We don't.
So as a middle school coach,
Yeah.
We would compete against a number of other schools in our region areas that had 6th grade kids in there. And I thought it was a great experience. So the more they could get exposed to 6th graders, if they were able to handle it. I like the idea of bringing the 6th graders into the school, I think for a couple of reasons. I think technology-wise, when the 7th graders get their laptop or whatever, so if it starts at 6th grade earlier, these kids are technologically on top of stuff. So that might be better. But it also bottles up the kids in a safer building. So you have a larger number of kids that are secured in a part of the school, I guess, you have 1% there. And I think having them mix and mingle without the kids under supervision is really good exposure to unified sports, whatever it's going to be. I think the pluses seem far outweigh kind of negative. I think it's just how it's handled.
It's how it's handled. And I've been doing this for a whole year, and I love my kids. My children are in 6th and 8th grade. My daughter's in 6th grade, my son is in 8th grade this year. And I've asked them both. I said, Chase, who's in 8th grade, did you like Parker Farms in the middle school better? He said to me, I like the middle school better. I asked him why. He said, because when I was in 6th grade, I could be on a cross-country team, and I liked the freedom of middle school. Asked my daughter this year, did you like middle school or Parker Farms better? She said, I like Parker Farms a lot better. I asked her why. She said, recess. So I say they're kind of crystallized in my mind. I think it really is dependent on the child. Some students are ready, some need a little extra help, but either way, in either of these models, I can promise you that I work with the leadership team and the faculty to make sure that we created the space and ergonomic structures and logistics for the students to be taken care of.
So, I have a couple comments. One is, I know that I grew up in West Haven, and my middle school was 6th through 8th, and typically the problems you saw were really amongst 6th graders, not with the upper. So, I mean, to that point, I don't have as much a concern. The second thing is, yeah, sports-wise, I mean, you could do it today, but that would mean you now have to transport kids from Biz to the middle school.
Right.
So there's a cost factor. And the third thing is, if you don't move the 6th grade up to the middle school, high school complex, ultimately, when we're going to sit here and go through these, numbers are going to be big. And if you're going to tell people you're going to leave unoccupied classrooms up at that complex and have to account for it somewhere else, that's not going to go over favorably, would be my guess.
You guys are good. You're getting a little ahead of me. I think we're going to loop right back to that when we talk about swing space, and also one of our priorities being creating the space for potential pre-K. So hold that thought. I think we're going to loop back to that. So you just put your finger on something important. So let me push us ahead a little bit and talk about option 3, which at first I think our focus groups have found maybe a little bit surprising or radical. But then as folks unpacked it a little bit, I think people see the value of it. Here, it would be closing 2 schools, right? And by closing, I really mean, and this is important for you to know, turning the buildings back over to the town. Giving Gildersleeve and Brownstone back to the Board of Selectmen to form another committee, because we haven't gone down that path of figuring out what those buildings become. And that has been something that people have asked, that what would happen to Gildersleeve in option 2? What would happen to Gildersleeve and Brownstone in option 3? Option 3 would have us no longer using in Portland Gildersleeve and Brownstone as a school, but creating either one large pre-K to 5 Valley View with the additions and moving the 6th grade to middle school, or one large pre-K to 6 Valley View and keeping the 6th grade with the younger students. So essentially moving all of your schools onto one campus and creating one large elementary school, either pre-K to 5 or pre-K to 6.
And that plan would potentially alleviate the issue we were just talking about with transporting 6th graders to use the athletic complex if they were there, because essentially they could walk up the hill and go to it, right?
For graduation, I park at Valley View.
Right. Right.
In a plan, you could add a road.
Right.
How many towns have pre-K through 5 or pre-K through 6?
Let me answer that by sharing some information.
Okay.
All right, so, these are the thoughts. Now, I know it's very important for you to see the numbers. So I want to share the fiscal consideration with you. To be completely honest, this is where Lou and I stopped with the focus groups we did with parents. The focus group we did with the Board of Education, we want to do with you, we want you to see the numbers, because yes, the numbers are going to drive a lot of considerations. And of course, one of our priorities is make sure whatever we do is fiscally sound. So the first set of numbers I want to share with you is a staffing analysis. Right? And I think it's going to answer the question of what other towns do. Right? I mentioned to you
Charles,
that...
do you have another one?
I do, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, I won't have it, but I think I have it hard. So I'll walk you through it. All right. So, one of the things I mentioned to you is that option 1, right, the way we're running our schools right now is expensive. Right? We're running 3 buildings, and running 3 buildings creates overhead in terms of staffing that probably won't surprise you. Oh, awesome, thank you. All right. So if you turn for a minute to page 2, top of page 2, what I'm going to focus on, and the options are labeled different here, is I'm really going to start with option 3. What would we be looking at from a staffing perspective if we created one large elementary school? Right? So that was my research question. And the way I answered it is I went and looked at 3 large elementary schools. Right? First, I looked at, you see the top column there, I looked at Beecher Road Elementary School in Woodbridge, Connecticut, which is a pre-K to 6 school. I looked at Highland Elementary School in Cheshire, which is a pre-K 6 elementary school. And I looked at Windermere Elementary School in Ellington, which is a pre-K 6 elementary school. I chose those districts because the next line there, you see the number of students. They would have the same number of students as we would if we did this. So I picked them purposely because the student relatively close or almost spot on with what we would have here in Portland. Right? Then I got in touch with those schools and I asked them, how many administrators do you have? How many clinicians do you have? By these clinicians, I'm talking about school psychologists, social workers, counselors. How many nurses do you have? How many PE teachers do you have? How many library media specialists do you have? How many custodians do you have? And how many administrative assistants do you have? I didn't ask them about teachers because this wouldn't have an impact on the number of teachers we have because we want to keep our class sizes where they are. But all of the people that support the teachers and the nurses, PE teachers are something that I wanted to know. So for example, let's look at administrators. Beecher Road has 2 administrators, 1 principal and 1 assistant principal. Highland Elementary School has 2 administrators, 1 principal, 1 assistant principal. Windermere Elementary School has 2 principals, 1 principal, 1 assistant principal. Currently in Portland, we have 3 principals. Principal at Valley, principal at Gildersleeve, principal at Brownstone. Same thing, let's skip clinicians and go to nurses. Beecher has 2.5 nurses, Highland has 1, Windermere has 1, we have 3. So very quickly you can start to see that by consolidating, we wouldn't need some of the positions we have. The next slide, I've pulled them out for you. I'm confident that if we did option 3, we could eliminate 1 principal and reduce 1 principal from principal to assistant principal, which is a salary reduction, saving $175,000. We could reduce 1 clinician. We could reduce 1 nurse. We could reduce 1 teacher, PE teacher. We could reduce 1 librarian. We could reduce 1 custodian, 3 custodians, excuse me, and we could reduce 3 administrative assistants. You follow my logic? And again, that would be to match the 3 comparable schools that I've identified. If you go to the next page, each of those positions comes with a benefit package. So I shared the salary with you, savings on 1 page, the benefit package on the next page. The annual savings by doing that would be the $860,944 a year. Follow my logic on this? If you go to the next page, where it says option, even though it's option A, it's really option 2 here. Cost savings over 20 years. I chose 20 years because that would be the life of a bond, generally. And I added a 3% escalator on that 860 because that's generally the increase in terms of salary and benefits. And I think it's conservative, but I chose 3%. Could be some years lower, some years higher, but I think it gets us in the ballpark. You see over a 20-year period, the savings in salary and benefits by reducing to 1 elementary school instead of running 3 is $23,133,000. Next slide, we took a look at facility maintenance snapshot for each school. I give you here the cost for electric and heating and telephone and water, sewer, and general maintenance. And Stephanie, my business manager, took a 3-year average of those. And you see the costs associated with running 3 schools right now. If you flip to 4 of the staffing analysis, you'll see the heading option A, total for 3-year facility maintenance is $388,000. That's how much we cost. Of course, it would cost us more because we'd have a larger school to maintain, but I project that we would be able to save approximately $101,000 a year by reducing from 3 to 1 school. I did the same thing and took that $101,000, added a 3% escalator on it, and over a 20-year period, that $101,385 annual savings nets out to $2,724,000. So if you take the $2,724,000, add it to the $22 million, you start to get a picture of what the staffing savings would be by reducing from 5 to 1 large elementary. Does everybody follow my logic on it? So I won't go through it in the same level of detail, but on the next slide, I gave you the same staffing analysis from reducing from 5 to 4, right? By closing just Gildersleeve, right? And it's still significant. It's not quite as much, but it's significant. Over a 20-year period, I would project, and I put it on page 8, that it would save $19,678,000 in benefit and salary packages by reducing, and $2,585,000 in the maintenance savings by consolidating to 2 schools from the 3 elementary grades. Any questions about that? That's threw a lot of numbers at you. I want to make sure you understand my methodology and how I'm thinking about it. You can hold my feet to the fire on these on a certain level. I'm confident in these numbers, but you know, they're not. I did them by comparing us to similar sized elements.
I didn't wanna get ahead of you also, but, and you guys also calculated the cost of actually closing the schools down over repurpose or anything like that. Not considered, so it's just.
That's up to us.
That would be
Yeah,
another
it's
committee.
right to something like that.
It would be if, I want to be on it, clear with everybody about that. If we chose option 2, our committee is not looking at what Gildersleeve would become. That's another lane. Or 3, what Gildersleeve and Brownstone become, another important lane. But certainly as we put plans together for the community after the work of our committee's done, I know people are going to want it. And of course, it would also have to factor in East Main Street. It would be an opportunity to conceptualize a number of facilities.
Charles, just someone in the chat asked if this isn't available,
Not
either
yet,
in a
no.
presentation or, okay.
Yeah, so, as I mentioned, the focus groups, I haven't shared this, I've stopped here. The Board of Ed and you have seen this, but the committee has, of course. Eventually, I'm gonna be sharing this more widely, but this is a rabbit hole I haven't gone down, but for the Board of Ed last night and tonight. Okay, so let's start, keep these numbers in the back of your mind. So it's important that you have both this in the forefront of your mind and this in the back of your mind. And I'm now gonna share these options in terms of the costs. Like, what would it cost to so this, what I'm handing you out now, was provided to us by Fryer, architects who came in. They did an outstanding job for us, right? They helped us take a look at not only the costs in terms of the construction, but also the reimbursement rates that we would be eligible for from the state if we did this. So, Lou and I are going to walk you through this, and I'm going to preface it by saying it took me a while to really understand it, and I wouldn't expect you to look at this right now and get it perfectly well, but certainly I think this is a really good look at each of these options from a fiscal perspective. So let's go down through the chart here. I'm going to turn your attention to option 3B. Okay, so you see the column labeled 3B. We asked Fryer, give us a best estimate for the costs of each of these things. Option 3B, the description here, if you see, is maintain 2 schools, consolidate to 1 pre-K to 6 school, right? So, and I'm going to walk you down the columns on that. Now, I want to get back to a question that Ralph asked, and it has to do with 6th grade and overbuilding. And I'm going to suggest that we stick with that option as opposed to consolidate to 1 pre-K to 5 school. Here's why. By keeping 6th grade in the mix, we're eligible for more money from the state, right? So that if the state reimbursement rates are sensitive to what's called your average daily membership, which is the number of students that are going to be served by the building. That's one. Second, by keeping 6th grade in the mix, what we longer term do is build the potential swing space for universal pre-K. Because if we built a school with 6th grade in mind, and pre-K came on board, we could move the 6th grade to the middle school then, and have the classroom space available for pre-K. Does that make sense? So I wouldn't think it would be such a great idea if we were looking at option 3 to go into it with we're only going to go for pre-K 5 and move 6th grade to the middle school now. That's kind of making up for past sins when the secondary complex was overbuilt, right? Because you're not building any additional space for universal pre-K. Does that make sense? So let's go down the column then of option 3B. So in option 3B, Brownstone would be closed. And that's the Brownstone row there. Gildersleeve would be closed. The Portland Secondary School would be subject to capital improvements. When you see the numbers, I'm gonna talk to you about that, because that was another question that was asked, how much for the high school and middle school? So we wouldn't be doing any additions or major renovations, but there are significant capital improvements at the secondary school that need to be kept in mind. What we would do at Valley View is renovate as new and then extend. So Valley View wouldn't be demolished, it would be gutted, right down to the studs, renovated the footprint that's there, and added onto to create the classroom space for the additional grades. Am I making sense so far? So that's what would happen at Valley View. Obviously, Brownstone Intermediate School closed, Gildersleeve School closed. If we go across the columns, Portland Secondary School and Valley View School, those are where you would see the square footage. This Portland Secondary School is obviously not going to change in terms of square footage, but you see the increase in square footage that you would need for the extension to create the additional classroom space. Follow me so far? Next column, the enrollments are up here if you want to look at them. Of course, Brownstone again closed, Gildersleeve closed. Portland Secondary School would stay 7 through 12 with a projected 542 students. The pre-K 6 school would have 753 student capacity, so we would project based on the enrollment figures. And here comes how much it would cost. Right? Brownstone, 0 for the Board of Ed. Whatever the town decided, that might have a cost that would be a different lane, right? But prior didn't have to calculate that. Gildersleeve, 0. Again, those are closed. Whatever the school would become, would be sold, or repurposed. Another committee is going to work on that if this is what the town decides to do. Okay, Portland Secondary School. We know, prior has told us, that there's $11 million worth of costs to the town that are needed at the secondary school. And that if you look to cost to state, we would be eligible for $3,378,000 in reimbursements for things that are ADA compliance, roofs, and other types of things. I'm going to suggest, and Lou and I have had a lot of talk, we spent considerable time at the Board of Ed talking about that. Take that $11 million and kind of think of it separately. You notice that doesn't change across all of these. We know that's there. We're worried about biting off too much right now, so just kind of compartmentalize that, and I'm going to share a suggestion in a moment about how we go after those projects at the secondary school. But if you upgraded Valley View to make it a pre-K 6 school, the cost to the town, $34,336,000. We would be eligible for a 52% reimbursement from the state. That would net us $35,838,000. So you add 34 and the 35, that's the total cost of the project. Portland would be paying 48% of that. State reimbursement would be the 52%. Am I making sense so far? Then, of course, if you figure the numbers I showed you here over 20 years, you start to get a sense of the fiscal picture.
Now, not the actual figures are exact, but is that a guarantee that the state pays 52%?
We're working on it. As a matter of fact, I'm still trying to figure, right now, we're at the point of the process where we're just getting a sense from everybody, this is something we want. The committee hasn't chosen an option yet.
Mm-hmm.
Once we do, the report is going to articulate a recommended from the committee timeline that includes referendum measures and includes applying for the state for reimbursement. This right here number is prior's projection on what we could expect from the state if we do everything the right way, based on their experience with towns similar to Portland, what they've done. But they've said the highest reimbursement rate comes from this option 3. And that's the 52%. And again, they looked at what's called Portland's ability to pay and said, this is what we think the Department of Administrative Services and the state would look favorable. Can I guarantee it? I don't know. We haven't even filled out an application. We don't even know what we're doing, but I trust Hvac. I and they've done a good job with us, and they have lots of experience in similar towns.
Does the state favor new construction over renovation, or
Definitely.
They'll give you a higher reimbursement rate for new building.
And the reason for that is the state doesn't want to hear from you for 20
they
years.
know it's gonna last longer than
Right.
renovations? Okay.
Now, we've discussed the cost of the building, we've discussed the savings long-term that we can anticipate. We've talked about the probability of state reimbursement. The one thing I don't see here is costs associated with transition. Because presumably, if you're building more than the entire footprint of Valley View in this model, you're going to need these kids to go somewhere else for a period of time. Is there any cost associated with modifying the existing schools to accommodate these kids while this work is being done?
I dreamed, and I think I can answer that. I'm confident that right now, by September, with a lot of work, and I would never do this because it would be a logistical nightmare, we could very easily move pre-K, K, 1, 2 to Gildersley. We could very easily move grade 3, 4, 5 to Brownstone, and we could very easily move 6th grade to the middle school for however long it took to clear out Valley View and do this work. We shared that with Fryer, and Fryer said to us, by doing that, you actually save money, because then you're not trying to do construction around kids in school, which means the jackhammers are going at night.
Well, I remember my kids at PHS, while the jackhammers are going, and they were walking on dusty concrete, and so, yeah, that's a savings, right
It
there.
is a savings, and because then people are working during regular work hours and not
Right.
weekends and summers and times or vacations. And it also creates an environment for our kids to learn away from the disruptions of working in the work zone.
I figured you thought of it, but I just want to ask the question. Yep.
So that could happen, and, you know, and of course, we have got to option 2 here.
Mhm.
Same thing could be done if we just take a 2-year period, create that structure, do the work on Valley View, move the kids around, and then do the work on Brownstone,
Mhm.
and then when you're done, bring the kids back. We're blessed, and I think most districts would be jealous that we're in this position. We have the existing square footage to empty the buildings out while the work is being done, so we don't have to work around teaching and learning.
So, whatever plan is chosen, we would start saving almost immediately, because we can consolidate the schools and reduce the staff as soon as construction starts.
I would say the following: if I'm not suggesting, please don't leave this to me. If things ever got really bad from a budget point, we ever had to go below the MBR and things were dramatic. The reality is you could probably close Valley View, right now. Right? It would not be good, and I would never suggest it would be majorly disruptive to a community to do that for fiscal reasons. But I say that because the square footage exists
Yeah.
now. If you go to Brownstone in particular, half the buildings have to look at.
Yeah.
We know Brownstone is got a lot of square footage we don't use. Valley View has some. Gildersley is pretty full. High school, middle school, there's a lot of square footage there. As you know, that's what happened in 2001 when it was overbuilt. And there's a lot of empty classrooms in space. So we would capitalize on that as a transition period. If and when we ever got to the point where one of these options was decided on, which was worked into a 5 to 10 year plan. Make sense? So then let me share one other one with you, because I've only been focusing on option 3. I want to get to option 2, which again is the option to maintain 3 schools. Right? So if I could point your attention to option 5A, this is the one that makes the most sense. Here it's maintain 3 schools. At Brownstone, in option 5A, it's renovate as new. Okay. In option 5B1, Brownstone is alterations. Okay. You can imagine that renovating Brownstone to new is a lot more than alterations, but certainly, what we asked prior to tell us what it would cost, right, to do, if we were to do a full gut on brownstone versus putting HVAC in and doing the work that we know needs to be done to meet our priorities, which is where we start. Then, of course, Gildersleeve in this scenario would be closed. The high school, again, it's the same numbers. We know that those are the capital projects that need to be done. Valley View, renovate as new and extension, and then alterations and extension in the third column there. And then you see the next row, Brownstone Intermediate School, square footage doesn't change, Gildersleeve closed. Portland Secondary School, same square footage. Valley View, you see increase, but only slightly now, because we wouldn't be adding all the space for the grades, we'd be adding the space for pre-K 3, yeah, the 2 grades back, sort of like when the portables used to be there. Brownstone in these configurations would be a grade 4 to 6 school with 318 students. Gildersleeve would be closed. Secondary school would be a 7 to 12 school. Valley View would be a pre-K to 3 school. And then again, you see the costs to town. You see the state share that we would be eligible to apply for, and then the total cost of the project and the total cost to town. That's the last two. So it's really, I would focus in on option 3B, and then option 5A and 5A1 as the ones that reflect what we have in here. And then, of course, you know from the sightlines report what option 1 is, the cost to maintain 5 schools.
Charles, I have a question. What's the difference between capital improvements only and alterations with balance of capital improvements? I'm looking at 5A1 and 5B1, and that's really the only difference I see between the two. Yet, if you look at the total project costs, they're identical. So I'm just wondering what the difference is if the project cost is the same.
Yeah, that question came up the other day as well, and we're going to contact prior, because it doesn't make any sense that it should just read capital improvements straight across the board. There may be something that has to do with 6th grade,
Okay.
and we'll get that answer.
No, just curious.
But
that's
yeah,
all.
the number stays the same.
Mhm.
For all intents and purposes, it should basically just say capital improvements.
Yeah.
What's the difference then between alterations and renovate is new?
Renovate is new is full gut,
Yep.
and start with just the bones. Alterations doesn't do the full gut. It starts with, it's going to be hard at Brownstone in particular because things like HVAC.
Yeah.
But that's really, you got to think of, if you took your house down to the studs, and then built it back up. That's renovate as new as opposed to, adding it
One
down.
of, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
one of the examples of Fire gave us is that if you did the HVAC in Brownstone, you put in the vents, but you wouldn't put in the ceiling. You couldn't put a ceiling in because alterations would only pay for a percentage of, and a lower percentage of the HVAC system. The alterations are basically what they just say, that you can alter the building a little bit, but you really can't bring it up to where it should be. The renovations is really the best way to go.
Renovate is new. And the renovate is new, the state looks at more favorably in terms of reimbursement.
Charles, I just want to, we have
Yeah,
3
right,
minutes.
3 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me then talk to you about process. So I wish I had more time with you. I said I was going to be as quick as I can. I'm surprised I got through all of it. Talked very quickly. Here's the process. So Mike and Bob are on this committee. Lou and I are on the road right now. We've met with a large number of parent groups. I think we've done 8 parent focus groups. We've now met with the board. We've met with you. We've met with PTO, and we're going to be going through August. We have different groups in town. We want to meet with the Democrat Town Committee, the Republican Town Committee, some senior groups in town. We're getting feedback. Our goal is to gather your feedback, and I know I'm not going to be able to get it from you right now, but either give it to me or give it to the representatives on the committee. Our goal is to Lou will get us back together, get the facility studies, been working on this all year, back together we're guessing sometime in the November timeframe. And Lou and I are going to share the feedback from the focus groups with the committee. At that point, we're going to ask the committee to choose an option. Right? After we've done all of this work, we're going to pick an option, and then I'm going to write a dissertation or a pretty comprehensive report in which I share the thoughts of the committee with you and the Board of Education and the community. So if you have strong feelings or desires or input that you would like the Facilities Committee to consider before we vote and write a report, share it with your representatives or me. Otherwise, I'll be back in the December timeframe to share that report with you. And then, of course, it becomes a function of Board of Education and Board of Selectmen about whether we move these programs forward. The only thing I would remind everybody is that to do nothing is to keep option one. So we are where we are now. The schools are going to open in September. The kids are going to be safe, and they're going to have a great experience this year. Longer term, we don't want our schools to turn into our truck. Right? So I'm not saying the sky is falling now. The schools are fine. Bob Shea is taking over for Carl. Our maintenance guys and custodians are doing an amazing job. They're safe. They're going to be a great place for kids to learn. But we need to do something. I don't know that we can do nothing for 10 years. Or maybe the superintendent after me, or maybe me if you still have me here, we'll be dealing with some crumbling infrastructure.
Between 3B, which we talked about, and 3B1, you don't have to tell us now, because you probably don't know the answer. What would the long-term cost be to do the renovation instead of building new?
So that's interesting. We asked Fire to say to us, instead of gutting Valley View, take it down, fully demolish, and then start with a new foundation and build up. And you can see that the cost of doing that is more. I think we could, in the prior belief, we could create a beautiful new school without tearing Valley View right down to the ground.
Well, okay.
We're gonna have to tap out.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, we're at 7:30, so we have to end it, but thank you, Charles. I think this was very helpful.
Thank you, Charles.
Let's get situated. Sorry.
That's all right. I'll let him, I'll get it to him. I don't want to say. I was going to have a sweeping generalization statement.
Lou, are you gonna see Riz anytime soon?
I will probably get.
This is for him, if you don't mind taking it to him.
Okay.
He got one too. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And thank you for your
Thanks for
time.
Thank you, Lou. Yeah. Likewise.
Hopefully we can make it work.
All right. Phil, I'm assuming we're good to go?
Yeah.
All right. The time is 7:31, and I'll now call this regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. The first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you all please rise?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on tonight's agenda is acceptance of the agenda. Now, I do have some changes to the agenda this evening that I'd like to propose. So after item 9, which is resolution contract agreement for hydrogeologic and engineering services, I'd like to add a new number 10, which is a resolution on the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, and this relates to that other resolution, so I wanted to tackle that at the same time. And then I'm proposing number 11 to discuss the town transfer station. We had talked about that at the previous meeting, about possibly adjusting those summer hours. So I'd like to do that, or at least talk about it. And item 12, I'd like to move the right to farm ordinance from a follow-up item to a regular agenda item, and potentially set a public hearing date on that as well. And so, which is number 10 currently, would become number 13, and then so on down. And the resolution on ARPA funds, land use department improvements, we're going, just so everyone knows, we're going to need to set a public hearing for that as well, for the next meeting, if that moves forward. So, with those changes, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All right, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. The next item is the approval of minutes from the regular Board of Selectmen meeting on July 20th, 2022. Has everyone been able to review those minutes? And are there any changes, errors, or omissions? If there's none, can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion we approve those minutes.
Thank you, Sean. Second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ralph. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. All right. Under communication and correspondence, I do have, well, a bit of good news. Well, two good news events that happened recently. The first is, you may have heard that the State Bond Commission has approved the town for $300,000 for our new Riverfront Access project that our Riverfront Access Committee has been hard at work on, and that is going to go a long way. As we have a lot of work to do. We have a preliminary plan for this site, but we didn't have any funding. We had $4,000 worth of funding from a grant that we had received previously, and now we have $304,000. So I just want to say thank you to Senator Needleman and Representative Carpino for seeing this through, and also the State Bond Commission and the governor. So thank you. This is a very big win for the town. The other bit of good news I have is that we were officially awarded our Community Development Block Grant. This is a $725,000 grant that we have gotten from the Connecticut Department of Housing. A lot of time and effort went into this, both by myself and previous First Selectwoman Susan Bransfield. So this is going to allow for substantial upgrades to the senior center, one of which is the kitchen. So the kitchen is going to be completely redone and dramatically improved. They're going to be able to improve the number of meals that they can provide through their programs, and it's going to be, you know, great when it's all said and done. We're also getting HVAC improvements as well, and this is a COVID grant. These funds were available through COVID, so certainly air circulation, as we heard Dr. Britton talk about, is so important, not just for our youth, but also for seniors as well. So this is going to help keep the senior center a safe place for our seniors. And also we will be getting a generator with this, which will allow the senior center to be a warming and a cooling center in times of inclement weather, maybe like days such as tomorrow or today, you know, when it gets really hot, and in the winter when it gets really cold. So this is a really, you know, big deal for the town, and so it's just nice that, you know, we've been awarded these grants, and so we're grateful to the Department of Housing as well and their commissioners. So so I just want to say thank you, and that's all I have for communications. So we'll move to public comment. Is there anyone in the audience? No one in the chat? Okay. All right. We'll move to the monthly budget report. Our finance director, Tom Robinson, was unable to join us this evening, so I don't have a report for you this evening. Keep in mind that we're just 1 month and 3 days into the new fiscal year, so there really isn't a lot to report so far. I do know I talked with Tom Revenue's coming in pretty well. I know I spoke with our tax collector, and they had a very busy month in July. And so Tom will be able to update us at the next financial meeting as far as where we are at with our financials. So with that, we can move on to the Resolution Small Cities Program. And this is more of there's a lot of paperwork and items that need to be addressed with this senior center grant. And this is one of the requirements in order to receive the monies from the Department of Housing. So if someone would like to move and read the resolution?
I'll move it and read it.
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
I wasn't here last week, so I'll make up for it. Resolution, Board of Selectmen, Town of Portland, Connecticut, August 3rd, 2022, Small Cities Program. Whereas federal monies are available under the Connecticut Small Cities Community Development Block Grant Program, administered by the State of Connecticut Department of Housing pursuant to Public Law 93-383 as amended, and whereas pursuant to Chapter 127C and Part 6 of Chapter 130 of the Connecticut General Statutes, the Commissioner of Housing is authorized to disperse such federal monies to local municipalities. And whereas it is desirable and in the public interest that the Town of Portland make application to the state for $725,000 in order to undertake a small cities community development program and to execute an assistance agreement, therefore, should one be offered. Now therefore be it resolved by the Portland Board of Selectmen that one, that it is cognizant of the conditions and prerequisites for state assistance imposed by Part 6 of Chapter 130 of the Connecticut General Statutes, and two, that the filing of an application by the Town of Portland in an amount not to exceed $725,000 is hereby approved, and that the Town of Portland is hereby authorized and directed to file such application with the Commissioner of the Department of Housing to provide such additional information, to execute such other documents as may be required by the Commissioner, to execute an assistance agreement with the State of Connecticut for financial assistance if such an agreement is offered, to execute any amendments, rescissions, and revisions thereto, and to act as the authorized representative of Town of Portland.
I don't think you need to.
You're good.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Any discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. Thank you. There may be more to come on this is whenever you get.
Oh, there will be.
Yeah, there's a lot of paperwork involved, but it's all worth it. So the next item is another resolution. This is it's a contract agreement for hydrogeologic and engineering services. So I do want to explain this first before we bring up the resolution. So as you all know, we received, also it was through the Bond Commission back in 2020, $250,000 to explore water sources for the town in Portland. And we've done a lot of work on this for many months. Back early on over the winter, we had an RFQ process, then an RFP process. We had an interview panel made up of Selectmen and Water and Sewer Commission members, as well as Bob Shea and myself. And ultimately, GZA was selected among this group as the preferred engineering firm. We then brought this to DPH, the Department of Public Health, in order to get their approval on all this. And so in order for us to be able to sign a contract with GZA, two things need to happen. One, we have to receive an authorization letter from DPH, and I'm told that they have the letter and that they're waiting to give it to us, because we also need to have a contract with DPH in place as well, because if we start work prior to signing that contract, then we can't get reimbursed for any of that work that we do before we sign the contract. So rather than, wait to get these documents and then scramble and have a special meeting and have the board authorize me to sign these documents, I'm asking in these two resolutions to authorize me to sign the documents upon receiving them so that we don't have to spend any extra time longer than we have been, because I know how important this is and we really got to get to work on this. And I will say I've been in regular contact with our representative at DPH on this, and they've been very helpful, and I expect to get the contract soon. I believe the authorization letter is waiting for us, but they want to send both at the same time, which is something that I just found out last week. So with that, that is the first resolution, if someone would like to move and read that.
I'll read it. Resolution, Board of Selectmen, Town of Portland, Connecticut, August 3rd, 2022. Contract agreement for hydrogeologic and engineering services. Resolved, that the Board of Selectmen hereby authorizes First Selectman Ryan J. Curley to execute and deliver in the name of and on behalf of the Town of Portland a contract with GZA Geo-Environmental, 95 Glastonbury Boulevard, 3rd floor, Glastonbury, Connecticut, 06033, for the purpose of RFP number 2022-07B, hydrogeologic and engineering services, to evaluate the potential for development of a groundwater supply and other supply alternatives to serve the future needs of the town. Total contract amount prior to any required change orders is approximately $248,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sean. Any discussion on this?
I just have a question.
Sure.
When is the NBC contract up? And what kind of timeframe do we have, and how much notice do we have to give to them?
2026 is the contract. It was a 30-year
Right.
contract signed in 1996.
Right.
As far as how much notice,
Was it a year that they needed?
I don't
Trying to
have that
recall
off the
it, yeah.
top of my head, because we're not there.
No, I
you
know. So we have
yet,
we have a
but
couple years, though.
but certainly we're going to have to be ready for that.
Yeah. Thanks.
I have one question too. At the last line, prior to any required change orders, is approximately 248,000. What's our plan if change orders do pop up in excess of $100?
No, we'll have to address that. I don't foresee any change orders, because there is some contingency in the contract with GZA as well. So, I think they were pretty, conservative as far as, on their numbers. I think they're going to work. I don't see them going over, but you're right. I mean, we'd have to, address
Just
that.
curious if we knew where we're going to grab the money from.
Yeah,
So
well, we'd
cross
get
that
the-
bridge when we get there?
Yeah, we can get the money.
Gotcha.
I'm more concerned about beginning the work at
Yeah,
this
I
point
agree with
than
you.
I am about anything else. And the other thing is, with cost increases these days and rising steadily, the sooner that we can begin, the better for us. But GZA has, said that they'd hold the price, so. Any other discussion? All those in favor of this agreement, allowing me to sign this, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. Thank you. The next item is that second piece that I talked about. This is the purple sheet, Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Program. So this resolution would allow me to sign the contract with the state, provided, once they get that to us. So we don't have to, again, have a special meeting.
Good question.
I'll read this one too.
Thank you.
Wait, Ryan, can we pause for a second?
Oh, sure.
I just had a question. Do we ever have a second on this resolution?
Yeah, Sean, I
Yeah,
believe,
Sean-
seconded.
Sean
Okay, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I didn't hear it either.
Oh,
Okay,
yes, Sean
thank you.
did, right?
Yeah.
I'll speak up.
Oh, and just, actually, I'm glad you said that. So I did get an email from a resident after the last meeting asking us to please speak clearly into the microphones so that, the people who are viewing online can hear. We just want to make sure that everyone can hear. So,
Okay.
good point.
Okay, resolution, Board of Selectmen, Town of Portland, Connecticut, August 3rd, 2022. Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Program, DWSRF. Whereas on July 21st, 2020, the Connecticut State Bond Commission approved the allocation and bond authorization in the amount of $250,000 to provide a grant in aid to the town of East Hampton and town of Portland finance a plan for alternative water source for the Route 66 corridor. Now therefore be it resolved by the Portland Board of Selectmen that the town of Portland may enter into with and deliver to the State of Connecticut Department of Public Health any and all documents which it deems to be necessary or appropriate for a grant in the amount of $250,000 to provide a grant in aid to finance a plan for alternate water source for the Route 66 corridor. And be it further resolved that Ryan J. Curley, as first selectman of the town of Portland, is authorized and directed to execute and deliver any and all documents on behalf of the town of Portland, and to do and perform all acts and things which he deems to be necessary or appropriate to carry out the terms of such documents.
I'll second.
I heard Sean. Any discussion on this? I do want to point out that both the town of East Hampton and the town of Portland received $250,000 each from the State Bond Commission back in 2020, so
So
just to
this,
clarify.
the action on here could potentially be related to what we're doing with the well search? Is that why?
Yes. So originally, I believe back when former First Selectwoman Susan Bransfield was looking for this grant, I believe it started as a Route 66 corridor project, trying to get connected with East Hampton. I believe that was the initial purpose, but we have determined that we're going to look for wells, and we could very well look for, wells possibly along that
That could have
corridor.
resolved this issue too.
Yeah, that's the plan.
But in the meantime, East Hampton's also got additional funding
They
for their
did,
water
right.
solution, so.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. All right, the next item is I wanted to talk about the town transfer station. If you look in your packets, you should have the current schedule that this board had adopted back, I believe it was in May. And we had selected summer hours to have late nights on Tuesday evenings to 6:30, and then close the transfer station. Instead of 3:30, we'd close it at 12:30 on Saturdays. So you remember we had a resident at our last meeting who brought up a good point that we did extend the summer hours well into the fall. So I wanted to see what everyone's thoughts are. I did look at what I felt would be an appropriate time if you were thinking about changing this. So I believe the first day of fall is the 21st, and if we did the last short hour on Saturday, it would be the Saturday, September 24th, could be the last of the short days, and then we could go back the following Saturday and then have that be open until 3:30 again. That's just a thought that I had, but I'll open up to you guys for discussion.
Was the concern voiced last meeting because the extended hours, that one weeknight, it'll be dark by the time people are coming through, was that the concern?
No, the concern, well, there was a couple concerns. One of the concerns, I believe, was that by going into the fall, you start to get, foliage and leaves falling, and by closing at 12:30, it doesn't give enough time for people who are doing lawn maintenance and care to get to the transfer station. So I think that was one concern, and that's a good point.
It is a good point.
So the intent here would say instead of to October 22nd, it would say to September 24th.
That's
What
what,
you're
that's what I was
talking-
saying. It would be a month,
Yeah,
basically,
yeah.
earlier, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It is true. I do remember last fall hitting the point where the leaves were falling and going, oh, I'm gonna have to scramble this morning to make sure I could get them there. So I think it's a fair change to move it in.
I agree with Ralph. The leaves aren't falling in late September in New England here. It usually holds off till October, so.
And I've let a pile of leaves sit in my driveway for a week because I had to get them to the following Saturday morning. So I understand where they're coming from. It makes sense.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I would not. Because the last time I did, it was all messed up.
I'll do it. I'll make a motion to alter the transfer station summer hours to change the end date from October 22nd to September 24th.
I'll second that motion.
All right, any discussion, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously. All right. The next item is number 12, which is the right to farm ordinance, which I believe is familiar to everyone by now. And our town planner, Dan Beret, is here this evening. And I know, John, at the last meeting, you weren't here. Dan did speak on this as well. So I asked Dan to come and, you know, if you had any questions for him about this. I think we can go to a public hearing if, you know, if you guys are comfortable with it. We can set a public hearing date, but I wanted to, you know, make sure Dan was available in case anybody had any further questions.
You, Sean, were not here last week either, right? The last meeting.
Oh, yeah, you weren't here either.
Yeah, but I talked to you after that.
It was a good meeting.
Yeah. But you specifically had questions.
Yeah, I know, and honestly, I've read a lot on it. I've gone to the state statute. I've gone through how the statute reads. I think it just needs to go to a public hearing. We need to hear what the residents want.
And this is the proposed ordinance that's in front of us too. So, which will be available. So we do need a motion to set a public hearing date, and I was looking to do it at our next regular meeting on August 17th at 7:20. So,
I'll make the motion for that.
thank you, Bobby. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Who got that?
Michael Phelps.
Mike Phelps.
I'll give it to Mike.
All right. That's close. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? All right, going to a public hearing on this.
Can I ask one quick question? Since Dan came all the way down here with the publicity of this, have you had any more people come to you and ask you about the farm ordinance and?
No, we have not.
Okay.
Okay, you can go home.
But that was it. Well, there was one more thing. So
Yeah, no, he's good, we need him.
They're all billable hours, I guess, right?
All right, so that's a nice segue into our next item, which is number 13, a resolution on ARPA funds, land use department improvements, but we're not gonna have a resolution tonight. We're gonna have to set a public hearing on this, and then possibly a resolution at an upcoming meeting if the board chooses. So I'll just explain first, then Dan, you can carry it from there. But so Dan is coming from the town of Old Lyme, and you know, it's not just, you know, Old Lyme, but many towns in the state of Connecticut have modernized their land use departments through several things that we currently don't have in the town of Portland at the moment. There's three things that I feel are priorities for us, and that is the digitization of records, particularly in the land use, has a lot of records. The next item would be online permitting. I think that whenever we can make business easier to do in the town of Portland, I think, it's a good thing and we should take advantage of that. There's not many towns that don't have online permitting at this point. And right now, we don't take credit card payments either in the land use office. That's something that I feel this would address. And also our GIS system is, would you say, outdated or?
What we have was great that Kevin made, but I wouldn't call it necessarily a functional GIS system that the public would use. And on the GIS, at least in the Riverfront region, we're the only town that does not have such a system available to the public. Lyme has one, but they don't make it available to the public purposefully, but it is available in the town hall.
Thank you. So those are the 3 items that I would like to see. We do have American Rescue money. At the last meeting, I did talk about this, and this board is going to have to look through the needs both with our long-range capital commission's report and various needs throughout the town. We did allocate $1.1 million on a water and sewer projects already. We also allocated $184,000 for the police body cameras. Now, some of that $184,000 may be coming back to the town if we have gotten the grant. We may not have to spend all that American Rescue funds. But right now, just so everyone's aware, what is currently unallocated is $1,458,574 is a rough estimate. So Dan has put some numbers together as far as what it would take to do these 3 items fully, and the cost would be up to $120,000 is what we're talking, which the most expensive piece is the digitization, and that would be a one-time cost.
Yeah, so the digitization would be a one-time cost. I believe it's a little over 400,000 documents. At this point, we either need to digitize and move to something digital, or I have to buy more file cabinets and find more space in our land use department. We're kind of getting overloaded. So that is the largest chunk of money. It was broken out of an estimate that was provided by the Regional Council of Governments that did include some town clerk documents and I believe some assessor documents. So I basically lopped off the 100 or 1,000 or so pages from those offices, and I got the rough estimate of about $70,000 for the digitization. A big part of that is actually preparing the documents. So somebody has to go through all of the files and remove things that can't go through the scanner, such as staples. So it's kind of a very labor-intensive process, and it takes a very long time. Personally, I feel sorry for whoever does it because it seems very tedious. So that is half of the digitization cost is literally to go through the documents and prepare them. There is, at least with the digitization, there will be a program that the town will need to have supported. Breadth of that will kind of have to be determined by you guys in terms of what sort of funding you want. In Lyme, we did not provide the digital documents to the public via the internet because of the costs associated with the licensing, but we did provide a computer in town hall that anybody could come in and look at, which people seem to like, and it's an easier format than us going through the files, pulling files for everybody. And that would include also all of our special permits, site plan approvals, variances. So if anybody wants to come in for certain street addresses, it's kind of a one-stop shop, whereas right now we have 3 or 4 different folders that all these things could reside in that we would need to pull.
So do we have any, and I know obviously you were estimating, do you have any sense from your estimation how you think how long it would take this process?
The digitization. So it would be in stages. We would need to box the documents up and ship them out to their processing facility, and then they would ship them back, and we would put them in cold storage somewhere secure. I don't think we'll keep all the paper files on hand, but that's certainly a possibility. Obviously, if we are able to as well transition into online permitting, we won't be taking in all these paper files as well, so we could kind of live within the means we have in terms of file cabinets. But it really is getting to the point where we're having to physically jam some of these folders into these files because, you know, we push a lot of paper in the land use office, and it's really eye-opening coming back after being there and doing that, and then going to Old Lyme and not having to do that, and coming back, the amount of extra time and effort it takes to push all that paper around. And it would really clean up the workflow as well.
What's included in the GIS mapping?
So the GIS mapping, so the last time the town, so Kevin Armstrong, he moved to the COG. He actually replaced me when I left to go to Old Lyme. So the last updated layer that we have for the town of Portland is from a 2013 Council of Governments project, which did a regional parcel layer, and that's the newest parcel layer the town has. So part of the bulk cost in getting the GIS up and running is to update the parcel layer from 2013 to the newest grand list year. So that's a big portion of the effort now. Part of that is the amount of changes that are made in terms of lot line revisions, subdivisions, and any splits that occur. So really it's just updating that, and then honestly I foresee zoning, wetlands, topography, really anything we can get our hands on, we can get online to host. Most of that data is free. But it's really the updating of the zoning map whenever that occurs, and then yearly we will have, and I'll have to work with Rich on this, the assessor, for every change that comes in, we need to do a change sheet, provide that to the vendor, whoever we select through the RFP process, and then they will update that as well as host the website. So there is, again, a recurring cost. It's nothing compared to the upfront cost. I don't want to say nothing for the GIS, but you know, I'm thinking $4,000 or $5,000 a year to keep that running and up to date in terms of layers. And I guess if you want me to segue lastly, I just keep talking, and the online permitting, that will save us a lot of time, and I think the GIS and the digitization are two components that will kind of, I don't want to say it's a stool because it's just two legs, but those will really support the online permitting and providing documents to people for permitting processing, as well as the GIS maps. You know, right now we have Liz who makes 50 scale maps for basic projects that don't require surveys. She'll never have to do that ever again. So that's a little bit laborious. Applicants can do that themselves. They'll be able to look at the zoning map, again, wetlands, all these things that impact their property, you know, provide the taxpayer, I guess, more tangible, tactile feel on information that they need about their property or may want.
Since you've seen the future in Old Lyme,
I would. It's not totally the future, but I would say it's the present right now. We're in the past.
I was trying to be nice.
Yes, no, it's okay.
Is there anything else in your department that you see that needs to be updated in the near future? Like, so, you know, next year you say, oh, I discovered this, or 2 years.
No, I think those three things would get us to the present, per se. I don't see anything, you know,
There's nothing
any
else
other
that's
low-hanging fruit.
lagging?
Yeah, no, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Not at this point. I think the credit card would be a nice thing too. You know, we've taken a lot of cash and checks. Again, that's something we won't have to handle as much. We won't have to do the accounting for that as much. It will all be automated. It will save us time and effort in the land use office that we can, you know, turn around and go back to supporting the public and doing their applications and projects and answering their questions. You know, personally, a person came in with like $1,200 last week. They're like, here's my fee. And it's like, well, this wasn't there, so I'm pulling this $1,200 fee with a receipt that this guy got, and you know, I'm not comfortable. I mean, we're just locking it away in the office, but it's still, you know, we probably had a couple grand, you know, in a desk drawer that's locked up. You know, I prefer not to do that if we don't have to.
Well, then for a lot of people too, if they don't have to come in and see you, they can pay it online.
Yes, I mean, one complication with this is Chatham Health District does not accept online payment right now. That's their policy.
Yep.
So we still have to receive checks in cash on that end. But that's really their workflow. You know, maybe in the future we can convince, I think Russ and the Chatham Health District move forward. The idea with the online permitting payment, I believe it's the same with the clerks, is, you know, we're not paying the cost of the charge. The charge cost goes to the applicant.
Yep.
So that's not a cost on the town. there are the recurring costs with the online permitting though, and it's the decision of whether we want to charge after we get everything up and running, charge an extra fee either on the zoning permit or the building permit to keep that running, so it's like a user fee, or if the town wants to, you know, eat the cost and provide that service to the town. I believe Old Lyme, it was $18,000 last year for the year to run the permitting program for all the permits that we've done. I don't think we do as many permits here as we do there in terms of, you know, mechanicals have to come here, obviously, for building department, but mechanicals would run through and more sheds. We did more permits for more things down in Old Lyme. The regs are way more complicated than they are here.
Is that something that we need to approve to get the credit card for the land use department? Or is that something that you guys can just do?
I think the credit card would be with the software, right?
Yes, correct. Yep. Yeah, so that would be,
That'll be included in this?
Yep.
Well, I have even a bigger question. I living next door to the town hall, I see the armored car pulling in almost every day. And I'm sure the fee with the armored car is associated with the amount of cash that we have to move through that armored car. Wouldn't it make sense to look at the credit card town hall wide in as many departments as we can to eliminate the cash and potentially eliminate some of the costs for armored car pickup?
Well, we have. We have been doing that. So currently, the town clerk's office, but most importantly, our collective revenues office accepts credit card payments. However, we do have quite a bit of residents that still, you know, prefer to pay.
Cash on the barrel rate, I get it, yeah.
They still prefer to pay in cash. So in a month, you know, like July that we just had, where, you know, bills are due and we're getting a large influx of cash, that's something that's hard to address. But, you know, I've been trying to get credit cards in every department of town hall. I think land use department is probably the next biggest fish, you could say, that we don't have. And then next on my list is public works and getting our transfer station particularly.
Are all of these entities using the same credit card vendor? Or are they mixing it up and everybody doing their own thing?
Currently, we use Point and Pay for tax collector and town clerk, and I believe also Parks and Rec. Those are the three that we use it for currently.
Right.
This is a separate.
I believe so, yes.
This is separate because it's lumped in with all the permitting and all that as well.
I was just
so.
looking for any way we can save money, that's all.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, we can look at that. Maybe we can combine everything that's on. We could try to put that in the RFP possibly as a cost saving measure. Yeah, it's not a bad thought.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. We see how it plays out in the RFP process, and we certainly can, you know, see if we can stick in some language to see if that's a possibility to save money in that way. If we can, you know, get some, just scale it up and get some savings that way.
Yeah, once we get that, I mean, it's Public Works and for Selectmen's office, we don't accept credit cards for, you know, permits right now. So that would be good as well. But we're getting there. This is a step forward.
Well, it's harder too, because the new generation, nobody has a checkbook or they don't carry it with them, and most people don't have cash. They use a bank card or credit card for everything, even a happy gum.
That's why we had to get the credit cards in the clerk's office, because I gotta tell you, I can't tell you how many marriage licenses I had to kick out because none of the young kids had cash on.
Well, the only reason I brought it up is in my previous career, now that I'm gainfully retired, I was involved in a program that we processed approximately $1 million a day, and that was picked up every day by an armored car. And when we moved that to an online process and did the vast majority of our payments by wire transfer, we significantly reduced that cost, and in some cases eliminated it. So it's a thought.
I have one question. A couple towns I deal with, they allow you to go through your checking account. Do we have that ability in Portland?
Yeah, so I can't guarantee that you'd be able to file a check online. Some of the programs I think allow it, some of them may not. That's certainly something that'll have to play out in the RFP. We would still accept checks in cash if you would like to. But primarily, you know, some people like that method of payment better, but it also sometimes on the larger building permit fees, the charge can scale up significantly. When you're building a house, and that in your building permit fees, thousands and thousands of dollars, that charge can be
Well, I'm
prohibited.
down. Not using a credit card or anything.
Right, yeah, so you can still provide check or cash, but the
Right.
credit card would be the new option, and we hope to encourage people to do that.
But that was brought up in the assessor's office before about paying your taxes, that people said they wanted the online check because it should be free instead of paying by credit card and then they have to pay a fee.
Even with the online check, when I do it with a couple towns, we still I still have to pay a fee processing.
There's a processing fee, but it's not like a percentage of the
No,
overall
it's
charge,
just,
like a charge
it's
card would
right.
be, yeah.
It's, I think some towns are 10, some are as high as 15, but it saves, saves me time from driving to Britain or.
Yeah, I
Because then I
mean,
get my permit online.
yeah, and you're saving, I think, right now, you're saving between your time and your gas costs, you're saving money in the end.
Any other questions, comments for Dan?
I think the only thing I'd say is, obviously, things along the line that I've heard, sometimes we get a bad rap for being slow and trying to get paperwork through the town. So anything that we can do to improve that process, certainly going to be supportive of.
Yeah, it'll certainly make the workflow better, and I mean, we track exactly when each permit goes through each department now with the date. I mean, you literally get a date stamp, and I think a big component of that is, right now I either have to email or call somebody. We can communicate directly through the permitting system. So as soon as I bring up a permit, I'm looking at it. If I need something, I can shoot a quick message to somebody, say, I need this is missing, I can ask a question, and it seems to pick up the pace of the process quite a bit.
So we need now a public hearing.
Yeah, so if there's consensus from the selectmen on this, the next step would be to hold a public hearing, and I'd like to propose that we hold that at our next meeting on the 17th, and we could do that at 7:10. Prior, we have the 7:20 on the right to farm, and we could do a 7:10 public hearing on this.
I'll make a motion for that.
Okay.
I'll second that.
So the motion would be to hold a public hearing on August 17th, 2022 at 7:10 PM to consider using, do you want to, here, the resolution's in your packet, but it would be up to $120,000 from the American Rescue Act.
Is that the one? The one?
Mine's white.
This one? Oh, no,
I don't
that's
have
the-
that.
Here, here.
Oh, that's the.
Should be there.
So you just want me to read the top, or the whole thing?
I just the details for the public hearing. That's the resolution that will eventually pass.
Make a motion for, Board of Selectmen for a public hearing, August 17th, 2022, 7:10 PM. Buck Foreman.
For the purpose of,
For the purpose of using $120,000 for the American Rescue Plan to make critical improvements to the land use department.
up to 100.
Oh, please.
I'll second that.
Thank you both. Any discussion further on this? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Dan.
No problem. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dan. You're welcome to stay if you want to, but.
It's not billable, though. It's not billable.
I will say, before Dan leaves, at some point, while he's here, and we can talk about it under general and formal discussion, if anybody has any questions on the Brainerd Place, I just want to see if the selectmen, just in case. No, not yet, when we get to general discussion.
You are staying.
Just a couple minutes.
It was a nice way to say sit down.
Well, hold on. Well, let's say, does anybody have any questions that they might want to ask on that?
I can hang up.
Okay, you don't mind? All right, thank you, sorry.
For you, Ryan.
All right, we'll move quickly here. Appointments to boards and commissions.
We have none.
Jim, I think you have.
I have one that I'd like to put forward. I'd like to put forward Jay Azakanian for the alternate position on the airline trail.
I'll second that motion.
I'll just say, thank you to Jay in the discussion, because I know he was waiting for a long time to get on the Airline Trail Commission, so I'm glad that he was finally able to do so, so.
Yeah.
We'll-
I'll give it to you afterward.
It's a hard one.
It's a lot of balls.
Yeah.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstention, motion carries. And that was it?
Yep.
Okay.
Hey, Ryan, can I just say one thing on that?
Sure.
Yeah, I talked to Ryan about this. We presently only have 3 members of inland wetlands in a 5-person board, so we require all 3 of them to be there to have a quorum to do anything. So I've spoken to Ryan, but that's something we certainly need. So if anybody's watching or anybody's qualified who has any experience in inland wetlands, I did speak to the chair about this today as well. You know, he was on vacation and we had to cancel a meeting. So if we could find some inland wetlands commissioners who want to bring some knowledge to the table, you know, I don't think it's a huge burden on that board particularly, but it's something certainly that I think we need.
That's a once-a-month meeting, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we actually brought that up at the Democratic Town Committee meeting, just to acknowledge it.
Yeah, I don't care. I just need bodies.
No, I know,
Bodies.
I'm just saying that we did. I'm just saying
Live bodies,
we're
live
aware,
bodies.
we're aware that.
Okay, cool.
Of your issue.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Here, I might as well chime in, right?
Thank you, Dan. So we don't have any refunds of excess payments this evening, so we'll move on to status reports. I have just a couple reports here. One is I have some good news to report, is that we have filled the Director of Public Works position. So I'm very excited about that. We finished the interview process, and our choice, his name is Ryan O'Halpin. He's coming from O&G, and he will be starting on August 22nd. And he brings a lot of experience. He's a civil engineer by trade, and so he'll be able to assist on many of the projects that we have in town immediately. And you know, I have no doubt that he'll be able to get brought up to speed quickly on all of the projects. So I just wanted to, say welcome to Ryan. Looking forward to
O'Halpin?
O'Halpin, yep. Looking forward to working with him, and I'm excited. He was in town hall yesterday, so I brought him around, introduced him to all the departments, and I think he'll be a good fit. I think he'll work great with the crew, and certainly it's been a little tough since Bob moved over to the Board of Ed side. We certainly miss him, although I still see him regularly, and he's still around to help, but we needed a director. And I also want to thank Mike Lestrina, who has been filling in for some of the administrative roles, and Mike's been going above and beyond to do that. And so I just wanted to say thank you to Mike, and I'm excited to put this chapter behind us and get that department back running at full steam. And so that, and then I just want to say, and I don't want to steal your thunder, but we had another wonderful summer concert yesterday, and
We did.
I just wanted to thank, I know Don Goodwin is on, and I wanted to thank our CERT team for all the work that they put into that parking job every week, because
It's getting bigger.
it's getting bigger,
Yeah.
and they're doing, every time they're doing a better and better job
Yeah.
with the parking. They're just doing an awesome job, and it's not an easy job. It's hot, and they're out there in the heat, parking cars. So I just wanted to say thank you to our CERT team for that. That's all I got.
Yeah, the only thing I have, I think, since we last met was the library board. Board of Directors met, and only a couple of things to point out. They're certainly looking at their goals, revisiting their goals, looking at what they've accomplished in the last year and what the intent will be for the upcoming year. So that was a very good discussion. The other thing is that they are looking to replace their couple things. They're looking to replace their outdoor sign, so they're getting some quotes on pricing for replacing their outdoor sign that needs to be replaced. And this cuts across a couple of the departments in town, but they are working on the story walk at the Riverfront Park. So that's in conjunction with Park and Rec. I don't know if it's Public Works or if it's Nate Streichardt's
It was
team.
Nate.
It's Nate's
Nate,
team.
yep.
And certainly the work that the library did to try to put the content that would go with those. So hopefully that's going to be done in the very near future.
Might be already
Might
done. I
be,
think
yeah.
they poured the concrete and they have I think it's done.
Yeah, I saw the poles. I wasn't sure
Yeah.
when they put the things on the poles. But I thought
Wasn't
I saw
that
the poles.
originally an Eagle Scout project? When it first went out?
I think there was another story walk, wasn't there? That
Yeah.
may have been an Eagle project. This is I believe it's a new story walk.
Yes.
It's not the same. So yeah, I think it was. I think
That's
originally.
what started this whole concept.
Yes, yeah.
So, yep, so that's a good project.
Great, thank you. Any other status reports, committee reports? No? All right, public comment? Kim?
It's gotta be the transfer station hours.
Yep. I just think it'd be much easier for you guys if you made a policy about the transfer station.
Oh, yes,
I'm
can you
sorry.
say your name and address?
Kimberly Hanna, 3 Butler Lane. And not have to go through this every year. Because in all fairness, for us, a quarter of the year, the people who don't have that standard work week get to use a town service that they don't get to use the rest of the year. So why should you guys have to every year make a policy that for 3 months, you're gonna change the hours? For half of that 3 months, you listen to people complain about it, or beat you up, or call you names, and everything else, when it's really a silly issue to fight about. It's a dump. And people get to use it, and they don't consider the people who never have that opportunity. There's a lot, I said it, I think, one day, because when Bob Shea talked about it in the spring, he said usage was up last year, and fee income was up last year. So to me, that speaks to a silent majority that need that. You know, we assume that most of the people work your standard Monday through Friday. But with the usage you're seeing, that's probably not true. And it's just one little thing, you know, those people that don't have a standard work week can't afford a motor vehicle, can't get a haircut. You know, there's little things we don't even think about. Don't have a 3-day holiday weekend. So for a quarter of the year, they can use the dump without everybody making an issue of it. Make your life so much easier to just standardize that and be done with it. You shouldn't have to take this every year. No, it's a dump. We shouldn't have to fight about the dump. For the 3 months that you do this for, you shouldn't have to listen to it, you know?
Yeah, keep in mind, I mean, what you ran into is that last year was the first run of it, to see what you get from it. So now we'll have 2 years under our belt. We certainly could make that
I'm a
evaluation.
little disappointed that you moved back from it, because it would be nice to see if that extra 4 weeks till October 22nd kept that same volume up, or if it really decreased a lot. But that decision's made, so that's all right. But, I mean, for you guys, just, that's gonna be the dump hours going forward. Summer hours are gonna start on such and such a date, and end on such and such a date. You don't have to do this every year.
I think my feeling is that we'll find out from people for the 4 weeks that we're reducing it.
Yeah.
Who wants to complain about it then?
They will.
I think we'll
They
still-
will.
I think we'll still hear about it. So.
You'll hear about it, and you'll hear about it from October till you make the decision, whatever date you're gonna start in the spring. But, you know, some of the things that you guys get beat up for are silly. And you could eliminate some of that just by being done with it.
I think it's a good point. It's a clear example that no matter what we decide, sometimes we just someone's going to be unhappy with the decision.
Yeah, you know, and I don't, like I said, I think there is a silent majority. They're used to not having a lot of availability. They've made their way in life without having stuff available to them. And they're excited because for a quarter of the year they can go to the dump. That's a little thing, but, you know, they're used to not having 3-day weekends. They're used to not, you know, getting a motor vehicle without taking a day off from work. They go to the dump for a quarter of the year.
Kim, you're right about that. It will become policy someday, but like Ralph said though, it was just a small sample size.
Yeah.
Last year was a test pilot one. Try it again this year, and then we'll fill it out, and it will become
It'll be interesting to
policy.
see- It'll be interesting to see if these numbers are the same or increased from last year's.
And I was curious whether last year's numbers had something to do, we were still on the tail end of COVID, where people were home more than they had been before, you know?
I mean, it's, like I said, it's a little, anybody that knows my husband knows he didn't willingly take on the expense of a garbage man as another household expense because he wanted to, it's because his schedule was changed and he couldn't go to the dump anymore. So, you know.
Thank you, Kim.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Kim.
We're not done with this. All right, public comment? Oh, wait, we are on public.
No more, please.
Lost myself there for a minute. Anyone in the chat? No, we're good? All right, so general informal discussion. Dan is still here. I just, while he's here, I just wanted to make sure tomorrow's you can come on up, Dan, if you want. Tomorrow's a big meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as you all are aware. So while we have our town planner here in person, we might as well, get our money's worth, right?
I don't think it's gonna be the last time. I have a feeling I'll be here on the 17th for these public hearings. That kind of
No, I don't think we need you for the public hearing.
All right, well, that works for me. All right, cool. Did you guys have questions? Did you want me to go over the basic proposal?
Can you give us the Reader's Digest condensed version of the proposal?
Sure. So, okay. So to start with, the Starbucks building that was running parallel to 66, they would like to rotate that 90 degrees perpendicular, keep it the same size. The main reason they're doing that is in the proposal. They are proposing to keep the Hart Jarvis house, which was supposed to be moved, stabilized by the company, and then handed over to a nonprofit. They're proposing to keep that now, renovate that, and I think the first floor would be a restaurant, second floor would be office space. They're looking to shoehorn that into a phase 2 with building F. They're looking for a waiver on parking, down about 20 spaces. And then they're also looking for, and this is the biggest change, is to add a phase 3, which would kick the largest commercial building into a phase 3, and then they need to request a waiver to the zoning regulations, along with the waiver for the parking, to change the ratios of commercial space, floor area ratio of commercial space to residential space. And that heavily skews a lot of the commercial to that third phase.
What's the rough percentage of that third phase of the commercial?
It's about 60% of the overall project.
Sounds
So
like.
I think in phase 1, there's about roughly 30,000. Phase 2, I want to say 14 or 15,000 feet of commercial space, and then phase 3 would be, I think it's like 60% commercial and 11 units of residential in phase 3. So my sense is they really want to get the 2 residential buildings going along with the rest of the improvements for phase 1. But yeah, I'll know more when they make their presentation tomorrow.
Are they putting both residential units in phase 1?
No.
It's going the same
So
as it
yeah,
was
so
as
the
far as
CVS, the
residential.
Sage House, the Brainerd House, the Starbucks Coffee House building, and Building E, which is the front apartment building with 3 stories in front, 4 in the back, is phase 1. Phase 2 would be Hart Jarvis, and Building F, which is the larger of the 2 residential buildings, and then phase 3 would be that last larger commercial building with then also 11 units of residential.
So is it safe to say that some of this adjustment is to resolve the problem of not moving that house?
Only the rotation of the Starbucks to.
But you said that the house that was going to be moved and taken on by a nonprofit is now going to become part of the project, right?
That's what they're proposing, yes.
Okay.
So if the entire project was built, they would actually have a little more commercial square footage because they never planned on that house staying there. That wasn't part of the square footage.
Yeah, theoretically, I think at
that's
one
it.
point it was like a museum or community center that they were talking about. I do believe there is another 2,000 square feet of commercial space they're proposing above the Sage House, which is the restaurant, and which is the house right on 66.
Yeah.
So I believe that is new. as well. They were gonna leave that empty, but I believe they're now proposing to convert that.
Are you speaking tomorrow night at all? Or is he just doing a presentation?
Well, so, yeah, I mean, the public hearing opens tomorrow, so, you know, I'm certainly there to provide feedback to the commission and provide them whatever information they would like. You know, we have memos in from myself, Jeff Jacobson, town engineer. I've spoken to town attorney Carrie Olson. She didn't provide a memo, but just had a conversation with her about the waiver process. They already went through this waiver technically once. It wasn't asking for as much of a shift, but they did already shift 7,000 square feet of commercial from phase 1 to phase 2. That is staying the same. And also Ray Sajak, the fire marshal, has provided input. So we'll see what planning and zoning, you know, what concerns or questions they have, and you know, I'll take that from there and either get more information from Carrie, Jeff, or myself to kind of allow them to make an informed decision.
The only, and I've said this before, the only issue I have when they do their presentation is that they don't refer to the Starbucks building. They refer to it as building F.
Right, and
D.
I guess, I'm sorry, I can't remember if it's building B around.
Whatever it is,
Building D.
I feel like it gives the public a false sense of security that Starbucks is coming when they're not even under contract yet.
That's true. I should, you know,
I'm just
regard that as
saying,
building B.
because a
but
lot of people are talking, Starbucks is coming, but they're not
Yeah.
on contract, so why would you give that community that sense?
Yeah,
that
my
they're coming?
understanding is that's one of the reasons they want to push forward with this, is so they can lock that down.
Yeah,
But,
but
yeah.
just for as the time
Yeah.
being, until the contract's signed, refer
I
to it
will
as
call
building
it
D.
the coffee house, we'll call it.
Building
We'll
D's
call
fine too,
Okay.
because it might not be a coffee house, we don't know.
Fair enough.
Just, that's my only gripe, and I hate that they keep doing it, because it's not what it is.
Well, I know, and other people refer to the pharmacy building,
Right.
CVS, when that is not necessarily true.
In a
Happened.
logistical and technical sense, you should call it what it is. I said it months ago, and people are still calling it that, and it just irritates me for some reason. But
That's fair enough. First time I'm hearing it from you, so I will.
you're too busy in old line cutting permits.
Well, hey, I concentrate on who's paying the bills.
Yeah.
So you guys have my mostly undivided attention.
So aside from the two waivers, like, that they're losing 20 spaces, is that a concern to you?
No, I think that's a reasonable request, but it's up to the commission to determine, you know, how to handle that waiver. So Attorney Olson had provided a memo back in 2018 for their approval, outlining both the waiver to 822 and the other waiver to 9175M2. And so it kind of explains kind of the criteria that they should look at. It's really to see if the kind of the different mixed uses. So the whole idea is that, you know, the residential, the office, the restaurant, retail, whatever ends up going in there, that parking demand will not necessarily occur all at once. You know, have different times of day, so, you know, you're gonna have a different draw in the evening hours for whatever retail or commercial businesses happen to be there, versus the office hours, which would be theoretically during the day, and also the residential use as well.
Not to do with their waivers, but, you know, you're the fresh set of eyes of the town looking at the entire plan, is it?
It's not, I was here when it was approved.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is
so.
there anything about the plan that the town should be aware of that you don't
That's
like?
changed? I mean, so I think this plan is unique in a way that incorporates the 3 historic homes. I think me and Brian have talked about this a bunch. It's not a strip mall. So you know, it is preserving, you know, specimen trees in there. So, you know, the idea, and I think what I've heard from some people is throughout the years is they kind of want this to be incorporated in Main Street and be, you know, kind of like a village centery type thing along with Main Street.
Well, they made the district go to Berry Avenue to include it in the village district.
The MUD you're saying, or the B3?
With the zoning aspect.
Well, so the village district only extends onto part of the property.
Okay.
Most of that property is zone B3. So, like the one thing that the CVS would have to meet, or whatever, the pharmacy building, or whatever that building is.
It's a big square building on the corner.
Yes, that would have to meet the village district regulations, which I know Sean's very familiar with. So they would have to meet those criteria. The rest of the project would not, but, you know, with the historic homes and the designs they're putting forth, I think it's a good-looking project. I will be honest, this type of project, they're talking about a large zone change down in Old Lyme for Halls Road, but, you know, this is not a type of development that the town of Old Lyme would be seeking.
With whatever building is on the corner that falls into the village district.
Yep.
What restrictions would be implied on that building?
So it's not
That the rest of the plaza wouldn't have to?
Yeah, it's just the aesthetics.
Yeah.
So town village, they would have to go through an architectural review and get approved through the architectural review based on our town village district, town center village district regulations. So that's the only thing. The use isn't an issue per se. You know, that's just whatever's allowed in the B3 zone in the MUD district. But it's really just the aesthetics of the building and signage as well.
Now, does he have timeframes? I know he does on phase 1, phase 2, but now making that phase 3. When he'll start phase 3?
No, I'm not aware of that. The permit or modification would be good for 5 years with a 5-year extension. So.
That's the only one that phase 3 kind of concerns me.
Ooh. Someone has to move.
You're not flowing enough.
I don't know. I was gonna get out front in the middle, but you know, I figured this didn't seem like there didn't seem to be a panic like I was having. Everybody was very calm.
I thought you were gonna make a run for it.
I'm not that well. I'm deceptively fast, but not that fast. So I don't know. He may share that at the planning and zoning meeting. Obviously, you're all certainly welcome to either tune in via Zoom. Some of you are welcome. I don't think you want a quorum there, but you know you're welcome to come in and pose that question if you'd certainly like. But yeah, I don't have a feel. I know we have Building Ian. I know he wants to get started on everything quickly. I know there's a time frame for the abatement that you guys have set up, and Building B, I believe the building permit is due at the end of the month. Otherwise, so there's the time frame that you guys already set up, but I think there's only a couple more benchmarks on that, but nothing was benchmarked for that last building.
So, question with regards, obviously he's thrown this change to it. Does this impact his foundation plans for the Building E?
No, so that's in, we have that fee in for the building permit for Building E. That shouldn't change at all. I think Building F gets shifted a foot over, but those buildings are all, you know, everything else is the same other than what I've talked to you about the relocate, the realignment of Julio's favorite building, and then it's just the rephasing and the reduction of parking.
Thank you, Dan.
No problem, guys. Have a great night.
You too.
Ryan, do you have any more questions for Dan?
No, he's excused, thank you.
Punch out.
Deceptively fast, he says.
Oh, I gotta round up to 8:45.
See you later.
Take care, thank you. Anything else under general informal discussion?
Actually, is anyone planning on going tomorrow night for me?
I was gonna either go or listen in.
If we listen in as well as there, we just can't have.
You can
can't
do
talk.
that, yeah, we just can't all
Start
physically
talking.
yeah, be talking together or
Got it.
something, yeah.
So maybe if we remote it, it might even be better, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like that would make sense, yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
kept going back and forth, and I think I settled on remote, you know.
Yeah, you can listen to it longer.
Yeah.
I'd like to, maybe if somebody can go and just, you know, because I'd be curious to know, you know, how many people are in attendance and things like that.
I plan on attending.
Okay, so you can report back.
And I'll remote in then.
Incognito.
Ryan, I got just two quick things. At the next budget meeting, if Tom could report on, I know he's closing out a lot of projects now and everything, if he might have an idea or an estimate, if we'll be in a budget surplus, or how much the budget surplus is, if there is one. for next-
Actually, So I anticipated that question, and I asked Tom about that today as well.
Of course you did.
And what I got from Tom was that typically we don't know what the actual number is until November, when the auditors are here. And that's when we know how we did in the previous fiscal year.
Okay, so November.
It'll be November is when we'll find that out. So
Okay.
you just gotta wait a little bit. I mean, I'm still seeing purchase orders, not purchase orders, but I'm still seeing payments for 2022 things come through. Not a lot, but we're still getting invoices from June that are being paid. So we don't have all those numbers yet.
Okay. And then the last thing was, and I just thought about today, driving down Route 17 with the new pavement. I thought didn't you say the reasoning for them putting a new pavement in is to put rumble strips in?
Well,
Like, wasn't that one of the reasonings why they were redoing that Route 17?
No.
In addition.
It was just, while we're there, we're going to put rumble strips in. That was what they
So
said.
where are they?
They
Well,
cut
that's-
them in after.
Yeah, they're not there yet, but
All right.
they're coming.
I just wonder why you'd paint the center lines without, put the rumble strips in, then paint the center lines.
Center lines aren't straight, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, I thought it was just me.
Because I asked Bob Shea the same question, because I had the same thought. The road was paved, they did the lines, and
Yeah.
they said, where are the rumble strips?
Yeah.
And Bob told me that if you notice, they just did the backfilling on the curb cuts that they put in. They just filled that in like over this past week or two.
They're
So
still doing it.
they're still, so what I anticipate is they have a contractor for that, and all the roads that they paved this summer, they're just gonna come in and do the rumble strips all at once at the end. So that should still be coming, but it's just not yet.
105 degrees, I think it'd be a good time to do rumble strips tomorrow.
No, they'll just be a rumble blob, it'll blend into itself.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Where do we stand on the quotes for the track?
Oh, good question. We got the RFP out, and it is due August 11th, so next week. So very excited about that. So I do want to thank Stephanie on the Board of Ed side, as well as Tom for getting that RFP out. And I believe when we did the RFQ, there were 3 firms that put in for that. And of those 3, 2 were selected for the RFP process. So we anticipate getting 2, proposals next week. So looking forward, because once we get the RFPs in, that will finally reveal the pricing that we all want to know, what we're looking at. So we'll have a better idea of the price as well as time frame. So we did request a time frame with the RFPs as well. So we'll know a lot more next week on the track. So thank you. That's a good question.
Brownfields.
That was just, you beat me.
Another good question. So good news, since the last time, I can finally report that our flood management certificate has been received by DEEP. So we are good to go. That is what we needed to do the remediation. We were waiting on that for several months, and we got it. It's here. So we are, I have a meeting with Ty and Bond next week. We're going to be talking about not just that, but there's another round of funding that's available with DECD. And so we're going to be applying for more grant funding to continue the remediation work. So that is due September 15th, and Ty and Bond is assisting us with this grant proposal. Another grant, we're trying to get every drop of money that is available to us. So we have the STEEP grant is due next week. The week after, August 15th, Monday, August 15th. So I'm working with that. Jeff Jacobson is working on getting us all the proposals ready for that grant application. And then, so the remediation, to get back to that, is scheduled to begin in mid to late September. Once the Brownstone Exploration and Discovery Park closes, we're good to go. We have the green light. We have ECR, Enviro Consultants and Recyclers, that will be doing the remediation work, and that will be going. And we also have the RFP, remember, looking for a restaurant-type fixture in that area of 248 Brownstone Avenue, and that RFP is scheduled to close on September 13th. So again, that's another large component of this project. So September is going to be a very busy month for Brownstone Avenue, and we're very excited to see again, you know, we've been waiting on this, and it'll be nice when we can, you know, see those trucks in there remediating the soil and getting this property back on our tax rolls. So that's gonna be nice, in one way, shape, or form. We don't know what that is going to entail.
Kind of on a side note with Brownstone Avenue, do you have any idea how the Brownstone Quarry has been doing for attendance? Like, are they back to like kind of the pre-COVID numbers?
It's hard to say with that, because what they started doing is I think COVID pushed this along, but prepaying for tickets is something that a lot of people do with the Exploration and Discovery Park. So when we get a check based on the revenue of the park, so we get 15% of the tickets, you know, and if people are prepaying, so if they're buying tickets in May to go in June, it's hard to estimate that. So we've only, to my knowledge, the last payment I think we received was for May, that I can recall. And so it was good. It was a good number. It was a good, healthy number. But I don't know how much of June that was and how much of July. I will say this summer has been particularly dry and hot, and that is good for business and good for us. So
Before I came down here tonight, I was watching Channel 3 News, FSB, and they had a story on the places to go in the heat. Brownstone Quarry was one of them, and if that was done today, the footage from that, it was packed. So
I gotta tell you, it's tough. We had a meeting at the Riverfront Park, and you know, it was like 1 o'clock, and going by all the people like swimming and having fun, you know, it's kind of torture, you know. But any other questions? No?
Really?
Anything else for any of the selectmen?
Well, actually, with the police cams, those are up and running now?
Those are up and running. Yeah, they were up and running for July 1st. Thank you to our technology department, right? There he is.
I was gonna say, no technical issues.
There was some,
A few bugs they're working out.
Yeah.
But overall, it's, you know, a lot of them is training with the officers and so forth. They're working with Panasonic, which is our vendor, that's kind of fixing the bugs.
Okay.
anything else? All right, then with that, we can move on to follow-up items. I do want to talk about, I don't want to talk about, but, you know, last time we did talk about the policy on fixing real property assessments. I had a meeting with our attorneys regarding our current policy with the Brainerd Place development. And, you know, after that meeting, I was kind of advised, or it was implied, that any changes that we would make to that policy should probably be made after Brainerd Place is underway. So we don't want to make any changes at the moment, because that's such a large thing, you know, currently.
That's a good point.
So, you know, I think we should just table that for now. I think Rich, our assessor, he will be available, you know, as soon as the time is right for that. But I think we should just kind of leave that under follow-up for now. And then I have nothing else on the town charter or ethics ordinance, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstention? Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
You too. Thanks, Rick.